Thank you all very much. Good afternoon. As we all know, the capacity of children to talk, read, and understand is one of the most important issues confronted by parents, particularly those of young children. As we all know too well, our children grow up and go out into the world more and more as they become part of society. As current or expecting parents, we all know or anticipate the difficulty of the early years. Some of you may even wish for your children to skip right to becoming adults themselves. However, the youngest years of life are the most vital for our children's futures. Our society would be a completely different place if we put more time and energy into our babies. Many infants and toddlers get very little stimulation, and we spend thousands of hours and billions of dollars down the line to address problems that could really be dealt with in childhood. Thank you all very much for being here. What I actually want to do today is give you all some practical advice that you can take home with you and use with your own children to make a difference in their lives. Before we start, I would like to tell you a bit about my background. My name is Dr. Robert Titzer. I received my master's degree from Penn State University, and I have been a professor for more than a decade. When I was at Penn State, my wife had our daughter and I became increasingly interested in infant development. Once I completed my master's, I worked in several infant and child development labs. Static made a video for my daughter because I felt so guilty just leaving her with the babysitter. I wanted to stimulate her while the babysitter, or even while I or my wife, was distracted. My wife thought that we should just put on a program for her, but she agreed with me that most of what's on today is just mindless stimulation with objects floating around, listening to music that's not related, and I did not want her doing that. The video for my daughter was different. I applied my knowledge of infant predictive learning to language through stories. I didn't just want my daughter sitting there and numbly watching, so I included serious gestures and movements into the program. Later I also put in some prompts for her to speak at different points. So I just feel very fortunate that I happened to do this out of parental guilt, and this has completely changed my daughter's life. She's already graduated high school and she's doing very well. You might just get a chance to talk to her later. She's already read so many classics, so much more than I'll ever read, and I've already been at it for 40-something years. Even if I started today and read for 40 more years, I don't think I could ever read the same way that both of my children read. So for those of you that have babies and toddlers, and maybe even 3 or 4-year-olds, I'd really like for you to have the same kind of experience. The difference you can make in your own child's life is so great early in life, and the reason for this is that about 70% of a child's brain is formed by age 2. So what you do in those first 2 years really has a long-lasting impact on how your child's brain develops. I've seen it many thousands of times. Everyone who sees these kids is always surprised and thinks, "Oh, these are the genius babies. It's only these few babies that are like this." But I believe that virtually any baby can learn to read just like all of the babies that I have video of to show you. But first of all, I'd like to talk a little bit about brain development, and then I'll talk a bit more generally. I'd like to talk about receptive language, which is basically listening, and expressive language, which is saying or signing the words. Then I'll talk about written language, and how your baby can even learn a second tongue. For a period of time in very early life, the brain develops incredibly quickly and then slows down considerably. In fact, about 90% of a child's brain is formed by age 5, while most of yours stopped developing completely years ago. Your child's brain is almost entirely formed before he even goes to school. If the parents are not as the child's first teachers, then there is a large opportunity missed. If you leave it entirely up to the school system, then you have not allowed your child to learn nearly as much as he could have, more nervously, that your child had learned had you been interacting with your child. One thing that stands out in my mind is the amount of physical changes happening in your child's brain every second during the first few years of life. For example, up until about 2.5, there are 10,000 new connections forming every second in the brain. How those connections form changes based on what you do with your baby. You have the ability to literally shape the physical structure of your child's brain by what you teach them. This is a change that will last forever. This is not a short-term effect. It stays for a long while. All of the energy you put in now will come back to you many thousands of times over your lifetimes. And you'll ultimately have more time to do the things that you want to do. Now I want to talk about receptive language. And receptive language is basically just understanding the spoken language. The first 50 words take a while, but once the child learns these, he will find it easier to learn new words after hearing them only once or twice. In the first 6 months, you want to be sure to repeat many of the same words and phrases over and over again. You want to make sure to talk to the baby about what he is interested in. This is the absolute best way for the baby to learn language. Usually you will want to talk about what you are interested in, but it is much better to talk to the baby about what he is looking at, pointing to, hearing, and moving towards or away from. Describe senses to the baby. Movement is a very important part of how babies learn and understand, so it's better to let your little one crawl around than to put him in a playpen. Make sure to talk to your baby in a special voice so that he can understand when you are talking to him most easily. Say things to your baby even if you won't remember them. Before a baby turns 6 months old, it doesn't matter how complicated what you are teaching is, the baby will passively absorb the information. Even though the child is the one learning, it's going to feel to all of you like you're the ones doing all the work. And, to a large extent, this is actually true, especially in the second stage of the program. Once your child has passed the 50 words learned mark, you'll want to begin reading to him regularly. As I mentioned, the young toddler's brain is still forming and, after a base is established, begins to function like a sponge on your kitchen counter. And since there are so many thousands of connections forming per second, the best way to make use of this period of your child's development is to introduce words that connect with other words and concepts. Most parents who read to their children choose picture books, but I would recommend moving as quickly away from picture books and towards chapter books as possible. Many adults love reading, so you should quickly be able to read books to your child at a level that you will both enjoy. This might also help you discover what your child is interested in. Keep in mind that you don't want to begin with difficult books, and some picture books are okay at first, but you want to move on as soon as possible.
Thank you, doctor. My question is, can I just speak to my daughter instead of reading to her? Wouldn't that do the same thing?
Ah, great question, Linda. You see, think of your child's brain like a spider's web, and what your child experiences like a fly landing on it. The larger the web, the more complicated the spider's path to its food may be, but it will likely catch more food, and, of course, the web wouldn't look too nice if it were only one strand. The words and concepts which impact your child's brain cause the whole system to react and grow. Now, since the greatest opportunity is, relatively speaking, so short, we have to maximize what we do during that time. Stories, particularly ones that you might think are a bit more grown up than a toddler can handle, are perfect. Using my DVD series and guide, you should easily be able to progress at a good pace with your children like I did with my son and daughter. What are stories? A story is a lot of connected words. The words connect to, as we all learn as children, the words near them. But in a story, each word connects to words far away from it. This is actually very similar to the structure of our brains with the neurons and connections like I talked about earlier. And so the structure of a story works perfectly with the developing brain. Now, I'll show you an example from my DVD program series, which I recommend to everyone I meet even in my personal life. My wife is always telling me to talk about something else when we have company over. I chose a program which involves both outward and, internal participation from a child so you can get a complete view of the series.
The Leeds Devil. Within recent times, the Leeds Devil has ramped about the New Jersey Pine region between Freehold and Cape May. Though it should have been laid many years ago, its coming portends evil, for it appears before wars, fires, and great calamities. Albeit a sober Quaker in appearance, Mother Leeds of Burlington, New Jersey, was strongly suspected of witchcraft and suspicion became certainty when, in 1735, a child was born to her. The old women who had assembled on that occasion, as they always do assemble wherever there is death, or birth, or marriage, reported that while it was like other human creatures at first, the child changed under their very eyes. It began to lose its likeness to other babes, and grew long and brown. It presently took the shape of a dragon, with a snake-like body, a horse's head, a pig's feet, and a bat's wings. This dreadful being increased in strength as it gained in size, until it exceeded the bulk and might of a grown man. When it fell on the assemblage, beating all the members of the party, even its own mother, with its long, forked, leathery tail. This, despite being wreaked, it arose through the chimney and vanished, its harsh cries mingling with the clamor of a storm that was raging out of doors. That night, several children disappeared. The dragon had eaten them. For several years thereafter, it was glimpsed in the woods at nightfall, and it would wing its way heavily from farm to farm, though it seldom did much mischief after its first escape into the world. To sour the milk by breathing on it, to dry the cows, and to sear the corn were its usual errands. On a still night the farmers could follow its course, as they did, with trembling, by the howling of dogs, the hoots of owls, and the squawks of poultry. It sometimes appeared on the coast, generally when a wreck impended, and was seen in company of the spectres that haunt the shore. The golden-haired woman in white, the black-muzzled pirate, and the robber, whose head being cut off at Barnegat by Captain Kidd, stumps about the sands without it, guarding a treasure buried near. When it needed a change of diet, the Leeds devil would breathe upon the cedar swamps, and straightway the fish would die in the pools and creeks, their bodies, whitened and decayed by the poison, floating about in such numbers as to threaten illness to all the neighborhood. In 1740, the service of a clergyman was secured, who, by reason of his piety and exemplary life, had dominion over many of the fiends that plagued New Jersey, and had even prevailed in his congregation against Applejack, which some declared to be a worse fiend than any other, if, indeed, it did not create some of those others. With candle, book, and bell, The good man banned the creature for 100 years, and, truly, the herds and tanneries were not molested in all that time. The Leeds devil had become a dim tradition when, in 1840, it burst its cerements, if such had been put about it, or, at all events, it broke through the clergyman's commandments, and went whiffing among the pines again, eating sheep and other animals, and making clutches at children that dared to sport about their dooryards in the twilight. From time to time it reappeared, its last raid occurring at Vincenttown and Burrville in 1899. But it is said that its life had nearly run its course, and with the advent of the new century, many worshipful commoners of Jersey dismissed, for good and all, the fear of this monster from their minds.
This DVD is an example of an early to middle stage story which you could show to your child. Depending on which specific version of the program you choose to go with, this can be accompanied by activities like drawing, repeating, or summarizing. Feel free to make your own variations as well. What's important is that the child keeps thinking about the story to maximize the benefits of the program.